Hey everybody. So in today's stream of React 2025, we are going to be doing a little bit of cleanup from the last stream. We're going to show a toast when we added a site successfully, save some user information to the database with that site. We're going to hook up Firebase on the server side, and then potentially get into making an actual API route so that we can fetch all of the sites and display them in a table, and potentially use SWR for fetching that information. It's kind of the high level bullet points of what I'd like to get to today, so we will see how far we can get. Let's start with where we left off last time. So last time we got the index page updated, we got a dashboard created, and you can now click on add your first site to see a modal and enter in some information and save that to the database. What we didn't get to was actually then seeing those sites reflected, plus having some validation that things actually work successfully. So I was able to notice that I saw some of you in here were actually creating sites but just not seeing them show up yet. So I saw a bunch of sites pull up in here. So we want to see those sites, and we want to have validation that these things went through successfully. So first things first, I already have this running locally. Back inside the add site modal, last time we did this on create site, where we called up to our database to save the values, and then we closed the modal. When we do this, we also want to send off a toast, assuming it was successful. We'll do some error handling later down the road. So we're going to do that with Chakra UI. It has a toast built into it that uses React context under the hood to manage those toasts that appear and disappear. So let's go ahead and get started. I think we'll probably just stick with the success toast. Success, we've added your site, duration maybe 5 seconds. Seems doable. Okay. Yeah, that worked pretty well. I think right now we're just assuming that there was a success. When we add some error handling in here, we could change between a success toast or an error toast, but I think that worked well. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell if it's in here. I'm gonna assume that that worked. I could also make this a little bit more. Refresh this. I don't see the site coming through. Oh, that would make sense because this one didn't either. So no site on either of these. And I wonder if it's because I added this in here to get that initial input to be focused when you open up the modal. But I'm wondering if screwing this up, or if adding this screwed up the values that I'm getting here. Pretty sure it did, but I'm just going to double check. did. Okay, well, I guess for the time being, let's ditch this. Okay. I'll have to revisit that. That's not necessarily a requirement. It was more of just a nice to have, but I want to focus on getting this wired up with real data. So we're not going to focus that input to start. So we are correctly saving the values. The next thing I wanted to do inside of here not only was save these values, but save some information about the user. So to do that, we're gonna pull in the user information again, and then I want to, because create site is just gonna basically forward this onto the database. So I'm going to say the author of this site is going to be auth.user.uid, I believe, and then I also want to know when it was created at. This was a note I made, so I believe we want to do a new date, save off that time, and then we also want to include, we're going to spread the rest of the values that we passed in originally. If I wanted to make this maybe a little more obvious what I'm doing rather than just values and then spreading it, I could destructure this and say site and URL, and I think that might be a little more clear just for future readability. Let's try this out. Success, we've added your site. This is, oh, okay, so I think that worked. The time looks correct. Site and URL are saved. Author ID, QITR. Yep, that is me. So that's working as I would expect. Awesome to see a bunch more people in here too, joining along. So thanks everybody who's following along. Really appreciate it. So we're saving that off correctly. Let me just check the chat. Okay, so yeah, we're saving that off correctly. We're showing the toast. Now let's move on to hooking up Firebase server side. I think that's a good start because we're going to want to show these sites in here. To hook up Firebase server side, we need to get a service account. And I've done a little bit of this ahead of time so that I don't have to re-expose the keys, but I'll still show you exactly what you need to do. So if you go into your project settings, and then you go to service accounts, you'll want to generate a new private key. So after you generate this private key, then you can use those values to set up your connection to Firebase admin. And we need Firebase admin because we're going to be using it in the Node.js context versus on the client side. So I'm going to add Firebase admin. Firebase admin not found. And then we need to initialize a connection to that. So let's make a new file. Instead of db, which is client side, we're going to do db admin. And it's going to be, oh, sorry. db was our database connections, and Firebase was our actual initialization. It's going to be pretty similar to setting up client side, except we're going to be importing Firebase admin. Admin dot initialize app. Oh yeah, I actually had this pulled up. Forgot about this. I have a website called Jamstack Functions that lists out some common serverless functions that you might want to use with your Jamstack applications, and I did already have one on Firebase, so I had some of this already set up. Import admin from Firebase admin. Here's the contents of admin dot initialize app. And then export default admin dot firestore. This is for a real-time database, and we're not using the real-time database. We're using Firestore, so we don't need to worry about that. I've also realized that I don't think you necessarily need to do this, because this, if it's already not initialized, check would be the same thing as skipping this message. So I think this might be a little bit more clear. That's looking decent. Let me go back to the documents here. So what I did ahead of time was I generated a private key. I took out the client email and the private key, and I put them in my environment file. And the reason I did that ahead of time is so I didn't have to show you it and then regenerate them and do it again. So those values should be good. And then the project ID, we already have defined, I believe, in our process.env. If I go, I also added these to the README of what environment variables we're using. So we already have the project ID from the client side set up. So these were the two that I added, and I just added the full list of the environment variables that we were using. So we can pull that. So we have email, private key, project ID, and then I need the right database URL. Okay. That looks good. The next thing we're gonna want to do is go into our pages, and we're gonna make our first API route. So we're gonna make a folder at API. I'll just pull up these docs and we can kind of talk through it. Basically, we export this default function. It takes in a request and a response kind of helpers that have some middleware in there that we can use. And we are able to do some kind of computation, whether that's get data from Firebase or save data to Firebase. And then this will get turned into a serverless function when we deploy it on Vercel. So we'll just take something like this. We'll say API.sites, and let's see. Instead of doing res.status code, I'm pretty sure you can do status 200. Let me find that. Yeah, I feel like this just seems a little bit more clean to me. Won't need to do anything with request for right now, so I'm just going to put an underscore marking that as a variable that we're not using. So return a 200 and return the JSON with this. Okay, server's back up and running locally. I'm going to open localhost and /API/sites should hopefully see this JSON blob. Okay, awesome. So I see a 200 and the JSON that we defined to return here. So we just created our first API. Now let's actually fetch some information here. So I just pulled up the Firebase docs. See if I can find why am I struggling to find this? Firebase admin read data. Just looking for a copy paste. No, not real time. No. Didn't realize it was going to be this difficult to find the doc I'm looking for. Maybe this will help if I just go to the node. It should use the correct one. So yeah, we want to get a collection of our sites and then get that. If it exists, then do something, otherwise log out an error. So we will start with this. Say sites ref will be we'll just call this database. Sites. We don't have a specific document that we want to get. Get the cities where some condition is true and then get it. We don't necessarily need to do this condition right now. We can just take our ref and do a get on it. For now, well, yeah, let's just see. Let's just get this working first. I'm gonna get rid of this else and just put the return inside here. We'll do doc data. So get the sites and then get the document. If it doesn't exist, throw an error. Otherwise, return that document and also catch any errors. Just want to make sure the table was called sites. It was, okay. Oh, I might have not saved. They're getting document. Grant account not found. Let me restart and make sure I didn't screw something up. Lib Firebase admin. Let me see. This looks right to me. ID, private key. Okay. It looks like it's not waiting for this to complete. It'd probably be a lot easier if this was using async await instead. Let's do that instead. We'll just do yeah, we should be able to fetch that snapshot. Get all our sites, and then I believe somewhere inside of here, basically we can iterate over what we got back inside of our snapshot. So for each document in the snapshot, we want to, we'll say the sites is empty, and then for each in the snapshots, let's actually add these into that array with the document ID and then the rest of that data. Okay, that looks fine. And we're going to take these sites. Oh, something's messed up because it's not auto formatting. That's how I know. So I have a syntax error somewhere. Yep, if I'm going to use async await, I have to define async. So go to cities, get them, fetch all these sites, and then return them. It should help me along the path to see if my Firebase connection is just not wrong, or if it just wasn't waiting for that API call to finish. And it looks like something is still not right. Account not found. So I'm wondering if maybe I didn't copy over my credentials right. Let me see if I can. I might just regenerate these keys after. I think that would be easier to double check and make sure everything's right here. Fast feedback demo. Fast feedback demo. Client email. Private key looks right. Firebase private key, Firebase client email. Everything's spelled correctly. Okay. Project ID, private key, client email. Firebase admin was successfully added. My yarn lock was updated. That's screwed up. My source control, okay. Just gonna keep running down my list of debugging why this wouldn't be working. Let me make sure the client side still appears to be working. Okay. But it is not happy about this. Count not found. I don't think I've seen this error before. I'm gonna be deep down a rabbit hole now. So it's something to do with my service account, it appears. One thing I could do is go back to project settings. Service accounts. I could try just re-downloading a new one, potentially. What other reason could there be an account not found? Let's just try generating a new one. So fast feedback demo hasn't changed, obviously. Private key. And then client email. Oh, extra parenthesis on the end there. I bet that was it. Stuff like that will get you every time. Okay, let's see where we're at now. Are we any closer? Yep, that was it. Copy paste errors are the worst. Yeah, so I had an extra parenthesis or quotation on the end there, and that screwed up my credentials so that I couldn't connect to Firebase admin. But after getting that set up, the connection worked as I expected it to, and our API was able to fetch all of the different sites, iterate over each one of those, add it to this array, and the ID, and then additional information about the site. So like here's the last one that we made. That's looking good. So this is a pretty good jumping off point for us to then actually try to consume this data and see it on our page. So hookup Firebase server-side API route for getting sites, and now show list of site. One thing I wanted to touch on, before this I was working on some styling changes, and I want to quickly run through what those look like. Let me know if you want to see me manually create the styles every time. I did that exercise in a previous stream showing how I went through OpenChakra and did those styles. Let me know if you still find that valuable. Otherwise, I can just do the kind of expedited version of that, which is just quickly show you the components that I generated. So we're going to need to show a table, obviously. So I started to build out a couple different React components that we can use to display our table with the associated styling props. So for our table, I'm just composing the box component and giving it some styles, passing in the rest of the props, and doing the same for a table row, table data, and then the table head. So this will give us a jumping off point for building a component that actually renders all of the data for our site. I did this, and I also started looking into a skeleton for the data. So Chakra UI provides us this really handy skeleton component that allows you to show a loading state. Right now, you saw we were just showing like the words loading ... which isn't great. So skeleton allows you to define a height and a width for what you want these gray bars to show up. So for me, I'm going to do the table rows, and it's pretty composable. So what I did here was compose these table components that I made, the table head, and then for the body of the actual table, I'm just going to pass in 5 placebo rows. So this should give us a jumping off point to show that as a loading state instead of just loading. So let's do that first, and then we're going to try to hook up and fetch data from our API route. So right now we're just doing if off, if there's no user, show loading. Instead of that, let's do, what did we call that? Site table skeleton. Okay. Nice. Okay, so you saw it showed the table that time, but the actual shell of our dashboard is still inside of empty state. So I think what we want to do is actually remove this dashboard shell from the empty state. And then let's go back into here, and we actually want to wrap, I'll just remove this. Nice. Okay, so yeah, we want to, if there's no user, we will wrap this skeleton in the dashboard shell, otherwise show the dashboard shell with the empty state. Let's see, what is that complaining about? Oh, the dashboard is saying while we're loading, before we were expecting there to be this user and the ability to sign out, but we're loading still. So let's do optional chaining here while we're loading, and maybe we just like won't show this button or something. Ooh, that looks so good. I'm gonna do it one more time just to see it. Nice. Yeah, let's say we only want to show this if there's a user. Nice. Okay, that looks good. We could probably, well, we could probably clean this up a little bit more. I'm just gonna leave it for now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is actually fetch data back. I'm gonna change my music really quick. The next thing I want to do is actually fetch back data from that API route that we created, and the way I'm going to do that is with a library called SWR. SWR makes it really easy to fetch data through React hooks. The reason I like to use this library is because on this dashboard page we talked about client-side rendering. I'm going to serve up that static shell and get something painted on the screen as soon as possible, and then use something like SWR to actually fetch the information for that table. One of the really nice things about SWR is that the information will update in the background. So if I navigate off the page and I come back, that information will stay up to date. Plus, it also allows us to have local mutation, which is probably what we're going to do when we actually add a site to make it seem really, really fast. So rather than waiting for that API call or doing an API call in the background, we can just locally mutate that cache for the different sites that we have in that table. So let's set this up. And we'll start getting the guts imported here. So API sites, will define how we want to fetch here very soon, either data or an error. Just log out what the data is for now. This would probably be more accurate than if there's no user, because if there's no user, we're probably going to want to redirect in the future. So we'll stick with that. If there's no data, then we're going to return the loading state. And then this is going to be like data.sites probably. And then if there's no sites, we'll show the empty state or the list, the site table that we're going to create. So we're not going to use error for now. I guess we don't even really need this right now. I'll leave it though because we're going to be redirecting. Okay, that's looking decent. Yeah, one thing that's interesting with SWR is the fetcher that you want to fetch with. So they leave it up to you for if you want to do REST, if you want to do GraphQL. One issue that I had just commented on was adding a default fetcher, because most of the time what I'm going to do is just take this and return JSON. So I think something like this might go through. Just kind of an example I can show you. Basically all I'm doing is making a fetch and then returning JSON. So we can stick with that. I will just put, maybe this would be a good time to start a utils folder, which I think I already defined in JS. No, I haven't defined it yet. Okay, let's do that. Okay, utils, fetcher. You know, the distinction between utils and lib or library code, I don't know that I have a great description for it. Like, I feel like setting up Firebase, actually making that connection, is more of the util, and then the actual database logic or the business logic, that's more of the library. So maybe I'll refactor that. Okay, so use SWR, call sites, use the fetcher that we defined, log out the data. If there's no data, because we're loading, show the skeleton. I'm actually going to move this down to the bottom. Anybody else like Odessa? They're so good. Okay. Let's try this out. Nice. So initially we rendered undefined while it was fetching. We saw that loading state come into play, and now we're getting back 19 different sites. Nice. So now really what we want to do is actually take this and create a table to display those sites. So let's start on that. Let's see how we're doing on time. Doing great on time. I'm gonna make a new site table.js. I'll just copy over the skeleton. Ooh. I was destructuring sites in the skeleton, but I mean, I really don't need to because it's not used. So I'll get rid of that. Let's see. Basically, the table head will be the same, right? We're going to do name, the site link, feedback, date added, but then for each row in the body, that's when we're going to iterate over the sites that we have. So let's do that. Do sites.map, and then for a site, basically we can just take one of these. Won't need we won't need, well, we'll do that. So render a table row and then render the data. So the first thing will be the name. Oh, I guess, yeah, that's not named very well. Site, it should probably be site.name, not site.site. Let's go back to here. Okay, I'm gonna purge the database so that we can start saving things off accurately. So I think I'm just going to drop this whole table, and then okay, so I return no sites. Okay, that's better. ID, name, URL, created at, author ID. Eventually we're going to filter that so it's just the ones for an author, but that'll do for now. So site.name, the link to the site, so we'll just do site.url. Feedback link. So this is going to be a page that we create that will actually be the fast feedback specific route where you can go to leave feedback on your site. So this is going to be something like feedback. Okay. And then date added. So we have site.createdAt, but we're going to obviously want to format that a little bit. But let's just see. Let's see if this is looking good. So if we go back to our dashboard, right now, it just renders an empty state. What we want to do is, we know that data is valid at this point because we have the loading check. So if we have sites, we're going to render the site table and pass in data.sites. Otherwise, render the empty state because we have no sites. Okay, let's see what we got here. So this is just returning an array. It's not returning any sites. So depends on how we want to name this. Whoops. I'm going to return this as sites. So I'm getting stuff rendered on the screen. This is a start. Okay. Now I'm getting an error about keys and arrays. I go to my site table. When I iterate over these things, I need to make sure that I have a unique key on here, which I believe was it just ID? Or was it UID? Just ID. Should probably be consistent with that. Make sure that error goes away. Cool. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Good. What do I want to do now? We can format the date and bold this. So let's take a look at what TD looks like under the hood. We can pass in any props that we want. So let's pass in font weight of either medium or bold. I like medium because then it doesn't compete as much with this header. Yeah, it looks good to me. Yeah, let's start formatting the date. So I like using date functions. Since we saved off with ISO dates, it should be pretty simple to just parse that and then format it based on the string that we want. So I'm going to just kill this quickly and add date functions. We're going to want to format. And let's do I want the date and the time, and I think these P ones are localized. Yeah, so the P ones are localized. let's go ahead and do, we'll do something like this to start. Two capital B's, 2 lowercase p's. So date functions is installed. We want to parse an ISO time, and then the time that we're going to pass in is going to be the time that we created at. This will give us back our date. I believe is it the date object it returns? Yeah. And then format takes in a date and then the string for how we want to format it. So convert the ISO string of created at into a date and then format it with the localized variant. Nice. I don't know if I'll keep this same format forever, but I think it's definitely a good start. Let's try mutating. That's something that I haven't worked with yet, but I've been really curious to mess around with. Looks like it's not on the landing page, so I'll probably have to go to the GitHub. Okay, so there's a function mutate that gets returned, and it takes in the data and whether it should revalidate or not. Tell all still revalidates to with this key. Man, that is slick. Wow. So I think I should be able to, in my add site modal then, import this. I'm actually going to move this up to here. And then after we create, I would mutate API.site. Yeah, this might be even better because I wonder if you could get into a race condition where this API call hadn't finished, but I'm trying to mutate this and revalidate. We can try it and see what happens. I'm guessing we'll probably want to manually update that data. Oh yeah, and I haven't hooked up this button either. We'll probably want to do that as well. Let's see. So in our empty state, we defined the add site modal. And then in the dashboard, we defined this button. Let's take this. We'll change this to the add site modal. And that button was way better. So we might want to customize. Yeah, let's customize the text that we can pass into that button. So whatever children we pass in. So for example, in the dashboard shell, we're going to pass in add site, but in the empty state, we'll do the add your first site. It just seems like a better call to action. Ooh, and there's also this on click here. Yeah, we'll need to copy that over. Okay, add site modal, add your first site. Dashboard shell, add site, and then if we go back to here, we want this button. Take the on click. Nice. Yeah, I like it. Even has this nice transform effect. I like it, so it feels like you're really pressing into the button. Click on this. Okay, now we have that same modal experience whether we're in our empty state or from here, and we will add a new site and we'll see how that mutation works. Yep. So that's what I figured. What happened there was it tried to mutate, but the post hadn't finished yet. So when I lost focus and I clicked into my editor, and then when the focus revalidated, when I clicked back into the browser, then it went to update that data. And that's just not quick enough. We want it to feel more instantaneous. So it looks like we can pass in the data that we want to update with manually like this. So where is data coming from? In many cases, you're receiving a single value back from your API, and you want to update a list of them. I think this is basically it, right? I want to get the current cache value and then return the updated document. So in this case, fetch the information seems like we're basically doing the same thing as if we were to define it up here versus like re-implementing our own fetcher. What I'm not sure about is, do I really want to then make this API call again inside of the add site modal? But I think it's reading from the cache, so it's not like it should affect that performance. So I would say yes. Let's see. So let's extract out this payload for what the new site is. Create the new site, make a toast, mutate API sites with, it's not really, it's going, well, ooh, yeah, so the API is going to return sites. And that's the array. So spread the rest of the sites and also include the new site. And then close the modal. So fetch the information of the sites, then locally mutate it with the new site. Whoa. Why is that taking so long? Did I? That's strange. I wonder why it took so long. Did I screw something up? Maybe I had a blip in my internet. I don't know. It's weird. Let's try this out. Ooh. Close. It worked for a second, but then it didn't have a key, so it failed. That's tricky because there isn't an ID yet because we haven't made it. And we can't use yeah, I guess we should probably have some validation on here that you can't add multiple sites because you wouldn't want to create two for the same URL. So maybe that means that we can change the key to actually be the site's URL, preventing us from having to put in like a fake ID that doesn't actually exist. Oh, whoa. I wonder why that's happening. So I think it's because we're using the use SWR hook in multiple places for that same API route. Yeah, that feels wrong to me. I feel like this might work. Returned data from mutate. I shouldn't need to do that, I don't think. Huh, this one's stumping me a little bit. I might have to do some more digging as we just went over the 1 hour mark. Cause it seems like what I don't want to do is from the top down have to like define the mutate function here and then pass it through all those levels. Like it'd be great if I can just latch into the mutate function inside of this, which I can, but it doesn't know how to update that cache. It'd be cool if like right here, instead of having to know what the data is from here, if then I can read from the cache, which I'm not sure if that's what this is. Maybe I can just give this a shot. Await fetcher. We already imported that. Await fetcher return. Wait, where did users come from? Wait, is this pulling the already existing value from the cache? Because if it is, then we don't even need to make an API call. We would do this and then sites. Except this is going to be data. Ooh. Yeah, we're gonna need to do this too. God, now maybe like naming it with the key of sites wasn't a great idea. Sites, data.sites, new site. Interesting. So I got in the same situation where I think we're definitely closer. Type today. So it had all the side like this. Yeah, this is 100% right. So we shouldn't need to do that or that. So we have all of the sites, and now we just need to return the new list. So why? Oh, I bet it's because to mutate without revalidation. I wonder if it's trying to then fetch from the API, but it hasn't finished yet. Because I mean, unless I'm doing something terribly wrong here, like that should be the same exact thing plus 1. Oh, cool plus. All right, P. sites at 7, sites at 8. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that worked. Ooh, and then it revalidated. Yeah, and then it revalidated and changed the order. So let me get rid of that. Ooh, this is disgusting. Go back. Whoa, prettier. You've lost it. It's probably because I have that freaking false in there. Come on. You really hate to see it. That is not as readable, but all right. Let's make sure this is working. Linked in. Yes. So yeah, with telling that API/sites to not revalidate, we're telling it that, hey, we're taking care of the local cache updating ourselves. Nice. That's looking really good. I'm going to go delete Google Plus out of here since it has the same URL and I don't want to get that key error. And then we'll see if this revalidates. Isn't that amazing? Like, then it revalidates when I focus back on this tab and I get the new updated list of sites. Awesome. So we've covered quite a bit in this live stream. We've got the toast, saving user info, Firebase server-side, the API route, and then finally SWR. And we're really starting to make some good progress here with actually seeing some sites, this login flow, all finished. Go to our dashboard, loading state, and then see all the sites. Now I think next stream we will probably try to figure out how to only show the sites for a user. That's important because this is my sites. And yeah, just kind of go from there. So with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in. And yeah, let me know if you have any more questions. See you in the next stream.